Revealed, the incredible transformation of a young woman who inadvertently joined the Mafia. Claire Matthews had always been the strong one, the rock of her family. At 26, she was a medical assistant in a quaint Midwestern town, keeping the clock ticking in a life steeped in duty. Nights were spent managing her ailing mother's needs while also supporting her younger brother's dreams of college. Yet, Claire harbored her own ambitions to become a doctor, but the weight of her responsibilities left her feeling more invisible each day. One evening, long after her shift at the local clinic, Claire found herself volunteering in the emergency room. The fluorescent lights buzzed above her, and the anachronistic hum of the bustling center felt overwhelming. That's when he came in. Wrapped in a worn coat with a face shadowed by the brim of his hat, the mysterious patient exuded an uncanny charm that struck her as both intriguing and unsettling. As she rushed to provide care, she noticed the sharpness in his eyes, but dismissed it as fatigue. He spoke softly about his troubles, how he'd been wronged and sought healing. It drew her in, this facade of vulnerability, and Claire's heart swelled with an impulsive need to help. But when she learned that this patient was entwined with the very heart of the local Mafia, dread pooled in the pit of her stomach. The charming facade began to morph, revealing layers of deception she never anticipated. She had crossed lines not meant to be crossed. This was a dangerous game, yet the allure of respect within this shadowy realm tugged at her. In their world, she wasn't just a cog in society's wheel, she was valued for her skills, her dedication a stark contrast to the invisibility she felt at home. Caught in the middle, she found herself wrestling with her morals. Was it right to keep aiding the man with the secrets whispered in his breath? What kind of future lay ahead for her, tangled in the cords of deceit, yet feeling empowered in ways that the clinic never afforded her? Claire's mind raced, heart clenching with every decision she faced. The question loomed, could she truly climb the ranks within this underworld without losing herself? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A reality that shattered any semblance of control loomed closer as whispers about her mother's past began to surface. The Mafia connections weren't just coincidences, they spoke of injustices that had once plagued her family, connecting her desire for justice to a legacy of suffering. The pressure mounted, and with every murky revelation, the weight grew heavier on her conscience. Could the path she was walking create more chaos for her loved ones? She could turn away from the man, stand firm in her childhood aspirations of healing. But would that leave her family vulnerable to the clutches of the same world she was now entangled in? Now, as her fingers trembled against the surgical instruments she once held with confidence, Claire stood at a crossroads. The day of a critical operation approached, a moment that required her to pledge allegiance to the Mafia's twisted demands or reclaim her purpose. The infinitely deep chasm of morality opened beneath her, and the shadows of her family loomed large. Would she honor her family's legacy, or sink deeper into the corrupted promise of respect and power? Claire felt the burning ache of uncertainty, knowing she had little time left to choose. The stakes were plummeting, and her heart raced, dreading the choices that lay ahead. How could she navigate through darkness without losing everything she cherished? As the sun rose on the day of the operation, Claire's mind raced with the implications of her choices. She stood in the quiet of the clinic, surrounded by peeling walls and sterile equipment, yet her heart felt like it was ticking down the seconds to a detonating bomb. She was usually composed under pressure, but today felt different. The stakes had never felt quite so high. She gripped the edge of the counter, breathing deep to quell the panic rising in her chest. Reality had coiled around her like a snake, squeezing tighter with each new revelation from her family's past. The weight of centuries rested on her shoulders, demanding her loyalty, especially at a juncture where her own ambitions were pulling her in an entirely different direction. As she prepared to assist in the surgery, she couldn't shake the feeling that today was not just about surgery but about more significant choices that could alter the course of her life forever. Every gesture she made, every decision behind the surgical mask, would echo beyond the clinic walls. She had trained for this, knew all the technical steps like the back of her hand, but today was about navigating loyalty and ambition. Could she still be the healer she aspired to be if it meant embracing the darkness she unwittingly stepped into? The operation loomed ahead, but her thoughts would not settle. Tension coursed through her veins like lightning. She had no way to predict which way her mind would turn during crucial moments. What if the Mafia's hold became too constricting? What if her compassion led to unintended consequences? What if her anger fueled by the injustices of the past became a tool for revenge rather than healing? As surgeons arrived, Claire caught sight of Dr. Wilson, her mentor, and the person she considered her guiding star in the field of medicine. His demeanor exuded confidence, as he briefed the team with precision. Yet, standing at his side, she keenly felt the distance growing between the life she was meant to lead and the one she was now embroiled in. Dr. Wilson had always encouraged her to trust her instincts, but lately, her instincts had been clouded by confusion and fear. Did he sense her hesitation? During the operation, she found herself zoning in and out of the surgical procedure. One moment, she worked with precise movements, her hands steady and sure. The next, she was lost in thoughts of the man who initially entangled her in this spiral. She could hear his soft words echoing in her mind, nudging her toward a darker path. It was a paradox of pain and respect, betrayal and redemption. Could she truly maintain her ethical foundation while also claiming a place within this precarious world? As the hours dragged on, Claire's resolve began to solidify. She realized she needed to confront her fears head-on if she was to emerge a stronger version of herself. This wasn't just about proving her worth to the Mafia, it was about reclaiming her voice in a life that had long felt muted. The operation's conclusion brought her a rush of adrenaline, not solely from the medical accomplishment but from a sense of clarity she had been craving. Decisions needed to be made, not just about the patient on the table but about her own future. Gathering her breath, Claire understood the time had come to face the reality of her situation. Would she allow this world to consume her, or could she rise above it, harnessing the very strength she had always kept hidden? As her colleagues commended her for a job well done, her pulse quickened at the thought of the man waiting for her beyond those walls. His world was calling her name. What further imprint would he leave on her life, and could she truly take the leap needed to break free from his influence? The moment of truth had arrived, and Claire knew she had to venture into the shadows once more for clarity. Wherever the path led, she understood she was on the brink of an irrevocable transformation. Would she step forward with courage or retreat once more to the safety of her past? The moment Claire crossed the threshold from the clinic into the bustling street, the noise of the world enveloped her like a thick fog, but her heart continued to thud at a rapid pace, ignited by the previous hours of surgical precision intermingled with existential dread. She needed to avoid the shadows lurking around her, yet they felt more palpable now, as if they were reaching to pull her back into the depths she had just barely navigated. Decisions loomed ahead like dark clouds ready to burst. Her mind wrestled with conflicting emotions. The adrenaline from the surgery lingered, creating a false sense of courage, yet, beneath it lay an undercurrent of fear that promised to drown her if she waded too deep into his world. The man's voice replayed in her head, smooth and persuasive. He saw potential in her potential that could either lead her to greatness or drag her down into chaos. Claire pulled out her phone and drafted a message to him, a string of thoughts that danced at the intersection of desire and caution. She wanted to assert her independence, to communicate that she would not be another puppet in his elaborate game. But then disbelief crept in. Was a woman navigating this treacherous realm single-handedly only asking for more trouble than she could bear? Her thoughts splintered as she headed home, the familiar streets morphing into bizarre landscapes. Friends and colleagues spoke of normalcy parties, joint ventures, life events. They lived on the surface, while she was now caught in a riptide, constantly gauging the danger beneath. If they only knew the price behind her every choice. That evening, memories of Dr. Wilson's guidance suffused her mind, the way he trusted her instincts and encouraged her to push the boundaries of medicine. Had she misinterpreted his mentorship? Were her recent choices a betrayal of the values he instilled in her? Would he still recognize her as the same ambitious woman he had molded? With each thought that swirled in her mind like a cyclone, her resolve crystallized. Claire knew she couldn't allow fear to dictate her life, nor could she merely float between two worlds, clinging loosely to ideals that no longer resonated. She sat at her cluttered desk, the silhouette of the city flickering against her window, and made a decision, one that would propel her into uncharted territory. She began methodically researching every aspect of the underworld she'd been reluctantly pulled into. Knowledge, she realized, was her strongest weapon. If she aimed to navigate this labyrinth and confront the darkness head-on, she must dissect it piece by piece, understand its players, its rules, and its repercussions. Armed with information, she could either exploit it to her own advantage or find a way to dismantle it from within. Days passed as she immersed herself in criminal psychology, street codes, and the dynamics of family loyalty in the Mafia system. Unlike the medical texts from her surgical training, these materials boiled with urgency, each revelation igniting her determination. Claire discovered hidden competencies within herself, skills not merely rooted in healing but also in strategy and diplomacy. However, lurking in the back of her mind was the realization that knowledge came with weighty consequences. Would she begin to act upon this newfound insight, inch closer to the man she had momentarily thought she could avoid? Or would she use it as a means to extricate herself from his grasp? As she prepared a new message, one that would assert her new footing without compromising her integrity, her phone vibrated. Unfamiliar yet familiar, it was him. Her heart raced as she clicked to read, a mix of anticipation and dread coursing through her veins. When she saw the words on the screen, the world around her faded, and only the message remained, pulsing with promise and peril. The gravity of the choice ahead loomed larger than ever. Could she respond in a way that deterred him while protecting her values, or would this be the turning point she never intended to reach? The threads of her woven narrative were tightening as she approached the next move, neither fully aware of the implications nor certain of her escape from the depths of the shadows, with the distance of her past rapidly fading away. Claire stared at the message, her breath hitching at the cascade of emotions that surged. It was as if each word was a thread, weaving her further into a web she had desperately tried to avoid. The offer was enticing yet agonizingly clear, a meeting that could tilt her precariously between empowerment and entrapment. Her thumb hovered over the screen, a battleground that embodied her raging internal conflict. With a sudden rush of clarity, Claire pressed her fingers to the keys. She initiated a carefully constructed response, each word laced with the resolve to dictate her terms. But even as she typed, the doubt crept back, and had she constructed a facade strong enough to command respect in this foreign terrain? This wasn't just a game of surgical precision, it required an entirely different kind of finesse. In her moments of reflection that followed, Claire took to her notebook to sketch diagrams of her thoughts. Each line paralleled her past experiences in the clinic, each patient a testament to the power of choice and consequence. But this was no operating table, her patients were lives entwined in chaos, where decisions echoed in silence like gunshots. She dedicated the following weeks to role-playing scenarios, envisioning herself in confrontation, making strategic decisions that strained her moral compass. She played both parts, drafting her reactions and responses to the unseen, shadowy figure who had pulled her into this twisted dance. Each imaginary confrontation felt real, pressing her to dig deeper into her newfound competencies. Could she bluff her way through this labyrinth without losing herself? Glimmers of confidence flashed within her as she recalled half-forgotten lessons about emotional intelligence, how to read a room, build alliances, salvage situations that spiraled out of control. Claire recognized the parallels between life-saving surgery and the calculated discourse of negotiation. Both demanded a steady hand and a keen eye for detail, leaving no room for error. After days of preparation, unease mingled with exhilaration as she finally agreed to meet him. The venue was a nondescript diner, its neon lights flickering like her own wavering resolve. Arriving early, she surveyed her surroundings, absorbing every detail that might factor into her strategy. Observing the tapestry of patrons, their hurried movements, calculated exchanges. She felt as if she were suddenly part of a scene she had always viewed from a distance. Then he arrived, smooth and suave, exuding an aura of confidence that was almost intoxicating. As he slid into the booth across from her, the gravity of her choice weighed heavily in the air between them. His presence ignited an internal conflict that made her question everything she trained herself to stand for. "Thank you for coming," he said, a smile playing on his lips. "It's a challenge," she replied, careful not to reveal too much. "You promised clarity in this meeting." He leaned forward, intrigued. "Clarity requires trust, Claire. Are you willing to take that step?" Her heart hammered within her chest. This was not merely an initial skirmish, it felt like she was crossing the Rubicon, the point of no return. The question loomed: did she have the strength to navigate the turbulent waters ahead, maintain her integrity, and outsmart a man who possessed an entire world of influence? With each passing moment in that booth, the stakes felt oddly familiar: a life on the line, only this time it was her own future. Would she play to win or retreat before she had to fully confront the chaos she had ironically sought to control? As they exchanged words, a realization dawned upon her. Here was the intersection of her worlds, the surgeon and the strategist converging. But would she emerge unscathed? Suddenly, a figure outside caught her eye, a flash of recognition. The ripple of danger surged back, and she felt the walls start to close in. Could she stay afloat and navigate this new phase of her life, or would the shadows reclaim her? The moment of truth approached faster than she anticipated. Stirring within a silent promise, she was ready to fight. But what if her biggest enemy was never outside, but within? As Claire sat across from him, the weight of his gaze pressed down like the leaden silence of a surgical room before a high-stakes operation. Her mind raced through the strategies she had practiced, yet fear was an unwelcome intruder. The figure outside, now retreating into the shadows, incited a primal instinct to withdraw, to escape, but she couldn't allow herself the luxury of cowardice now. It was time to confront not just him but also her inner turmoil. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice steady despite the chaos within. This question was a linchpin. If he held the answer's clarity, then she needed to navigate their conversation with razor-sharp precision. He chuckled, leaning back slightly, a predator reveling in the discomfort of its prey. "You underestimate yourself, Claire. You have skills that could be lucrative. Skills of a different nature than the ones you display in that pristine clinic of yours." His insinuation wrapped around her mind, each word a tendril latching onto her insecurities. Had she been transparent enough in her choices? Did she exude any of the qualities he suggested she possess? The disquiet intensely felt like the moments before incising a patient, where both life and uncertainty hung delicately in balance. Focusing on breathing, she summoned memories of the operating theater, how every action had to be deliberate, each decision carefully considered. Panic led to mistakes. She had to keep her faculties sharp. "And what makes you think I'd be interested in your world?" "Because you're already entangled, Claire. You've tasted power. You've seen how influence shifts the very fabric of reality," he replied, his tone smoother than silk, yet sharp as a scalpel. "It's intoxicating, isn't it? The sheer potential to manipulate, to control." A flicker of recognition surged within her. Was he right? Was this not a moment of opportunity but a crossroads beckoning her toward a darker mirror, a reflection of herself she had been avoiding? Doubts lurked, whispering that she might be drawn deeper into his web, yet instinct urged her to negotiate rather than capitulate. "Perhaps," she began, her voice steadying as confidence began to spark inside her. "But power without purpose is hollow. What's the end game in all of this? Just money and influence?" He regarded her thoughtfully, and she could almost see the gears turning in his mind. "You think yourself above those desires? Imagine wielding power not just for personal gain, but to reshape the world. Consider the lives you could influence. The healing beyond your sterile walls." Her heart raced, a mixture of revulsion and intrigue. His words painted wild visions that brushed against her idealism. Healing wasn't at her core motivation. But she had sworn an oath to save lives, not manipulate them. But at what cost? Claire challenged, leaning forward, her mind sharpening with every word. Your methods could destroy lives. I refuse to be complicit in something I don't believe in. For that fragile moment, they were locked in a battle of wills, each weighing the integrity of their convictions against the allure of temptation. She could feel the tide shifting, her resolve hardening. This was her opportunity to reclaim power not through compromise but through confrontation. Choose wisely, Claire, he replied, masking a hint of menace beneath a veneer of charm. This door, once closed, may never open again. Claire's pulse quickened. There was an unsettling clarity emerging from this confrontation, revealing more about her than she had expected. The stakes were personal and professional, a cacophony of emotions swirling within. Yet, beneath the layers of conflict, something deeper thrummed in her consciousness. Could she truly leverage this moment to fortify her strengths and emerge as a formidable contender in this game? The lurking shadows of doubt still clung to her, but a flicker of determination ignited within. As they exchanged more ideas, she recognized the familiar spark of strategy, the very essence of negotiation mixed with a heart racing against the dark potential of what lay ahead. The adrenaline surged, igniting possibilities she hadn't even considered. What if this was more than a battle of wits? The moment hung heavy as she caught another glimpse of movement outside, more than just a figure, an omen. A reminder that choices didn't exist in isolation, they forged paths, drawing lines between safety and peril. Claire made her decision, her voice resolute. She would redefine the terms of engagement. If I'm going to be part of this world, it will be on my terms. With that proclamation, tension crackled in the air, and she understood that while the battle raged outside, the true fight was within her. Yet, in that clarity, a new fear coiled around her heart. What if, in uncovering her strength, she might inadvertently unleash forces far beyond her control? What lay ahead in this tantalizing yet tumultuous dance with shadows? The moment Claire declared her terms, an unexpected silence enveloped the room, pregnant with implication. The man opposite her, this enigmatic figure, held her gaze with a mix of surprise and intrigue, as though he had been waiting for this revelation to surface. It was a subtle shift, but in that instant, she felt a surge of exhilaration that lit the smoldering embers of her confidence. What do you think you can negotiate, Claire? He asked, his tone teasing, yet laced with uncertainty. The challenge was palpable, and with each beat, her heart raced in rhythm with the burgeoning realization of her newfound agency. I want access, she countered, her voice firm. If I'm to entertain any notion of your world, I demand the ability to influence how this power is used. Healing, not destruction, must remain at the forefront. His eyes narrowed slightly in contemplation. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Claire felt a mixture of pride and an echo of fear. She was venturing into uncharted territory, and the lurking influence of dread began to press at the edges of her mind. For the first time, she observed the meticulous nature of his demeanor with acute awareness. His polished exterior masked something primal. In his world, ambiguity was a tool, and her clarity stood as a stark contrast. She began to see the power dynamics unfold, realizing her ability to wield influence was tied intrinsically to her understanding of herself and her values. Influence is twofold, Claire, he warned, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. You may find that which you seek bears a weight far heavier than you anticipate. Her fingers tapped rhythmically against the tabletop, a habit she had developed during long surgeries. Each sound resonated like a steady heartbeat, grounding her in resolve. I'm aware of the risks, she replied, tightening her grip on the narrative. But I refuse to be a pawn in someone else's game. The duality of her situation struck her anew. Here was Claire, a respected practitioner sworn to save lives, now encroaching into the antithesis of her values. The fear that danced around her was no longer suffocating, it was invigorating. This confrontation didn't merely illuminate her choices, it opened up avenues of growth, potential she had scarcely fathomed. Very well, he relented, a knowing smirk forming against the shadows that danced along the contours of his face. If you wish to explore this power, we shall observe how well you play this game. The room crackled with electric tension, each word weaving webs of possibility and danger around them both. As their conversation shifted from negotiations to plans of action, Claire noticed her instincts sharpening. Strategic thinking surged in response to the uncertainty surrounding her. Yet, with each passing moment, a weightier burden settled upon her heart. The moral implications of her emerging role gnawed persistently at her conscience. She could shape the narrative, but at what cost? Healing could indeed emerge from power's grasp, but shadows whispered warnings of manipulation and corruption. Suddenly, the figure outside re-emerged, clearly more than an innocent observer, and Claire's adrenaline sparked anew. This was no longer a simple negotiation, it was a declaration of war against her own values, a show of strength that could lead to ruin. Her thoughts clashed tumultuously. She would not allow herself to falter now. Clarity emerged, she needed allies, those who aligned with her vision of healing rather than chaos. She couldn't shape the world alone, she needed a team to propel this mantle forward. Then let us talk about the allies I need, she said, resolve solidifying her words. I want to embrace this world without a guiding hand, without a merger of purpose. As she spoke, something remarkable ignited in her. Her objectives were clearer than ever. Power could be channeled into something greater, something meaningful. She felt emboldened by the transformation taking place within herself. In the back of her mind, the fragments of dread shifted into something else, a sense of purpose. The dance with the shadows felt less constraining now, evolving into an exploration of strength. But just as she caught that tantalizing glimpse of clarity, the figure stirred again, urgency radiating from his presence. There is someone watching you, he said, voice low. And they will not take kindly to your ambitions. The facade of confidence flickered momentarily, her heartbeat racing in unison with the encroaching uncertainty. Suddenly, the delicate balance she had worked to maintain felt jeopardized, and she wondered just how many forces she was now entangling herself with. Could she truly orchestrate her vision, or was she merely stepping into an intricate trap, the threads of her desire slowly weaving into an expected snare? The stakes were raising, and time was running out. Claire resolved to act quickly. Her next moves would define everything, failure was no longer an option. As she prepared to navigate the treacherous waters ahead, the dance with shadows grew darker still, pulling her deeper into a conflict she may not be prepared to manage. Yet the tension crackled with potential, and she steeled herself. This was her moment to assert dominion over the labyrinth of uncertainty lying before her. The stakes had evolved, and the daunting question loomed: could Claire not only survive but conquer the hidden facets of herself as she stepped deeper into the fray? The words hung heavy in the air, resonating with an intensity that Claire couldn't shake off. She felt the world shift beneath her feet, the welcoming comfort of her known existence giving way to a precarious new reality. The stakes had evolved from abstract concepts of power to something far more visceral, a game played in the shadows where rules were negotiable and the price of failure was steep. What did it mean to navigate this duality? On one hand, she was a dedicated healer, pledged to protect life, and on the other, she was charting a course into the murky depths of influence and possibly, corruption. The ambivalence of her ambitions threatened to unravel the very fabric of who she was. As she sat across from him, that teasing, enigmatic figure now hovering between her mentor and her adversary, a swell of determination surged within her. She would not allow herself to be swept away. Strategy flickered to life in her mind like the distant glow of a lighthouse beacon guiding her forward amidst the fog of uncertainty. She needed to think like a strategist, to anticipate the movements of both allies and enemies. Since we're discussing allies, she began anew, her voice unwavering despite the swirling tides of anxiety, we need to identify individuals who align with my vision. I won't step further without a coalition. Each word pushed her further into a realm where fanciful dreams met grim realities. He leaned back, amusement faintly visible in his eyes. Coalition? You think it's that simple? True power doesn't come from numbers but from discretion and ruthlessness. Her chest tightened at the dismissal. There was an edge to his words that suggested not all alliances would be born of camaraderie, some would demand sacrifices she was not yet willing to contemplate. Yet, an ember of rebellion sparked anew, she was prepared to redefine her understanding of allegiance. What if I combine my expertise with those who share my ideals? She countered, the possibility escaping her lips almost out of instinct. People who are also disillusioned by this world, those who prioritize healing over harm. I refuse to operate in isolation. It's too risky. He paused, intrigued. A flicker of respect or perhaps challenge danced in his gaze. Determination and courage are good traits, Claire. But know this, in pursuit of your cause, you may encounter resistance that will test your resolve. Just as she absorbed this warning, a low rumble echoed from outside. The tension in the room curled tighter around them, as if the walls were closing in. Claire felt a pulse of adrenaline. What had she awakened? Who else knows of our conversation? The words slipped out before she could harness her instinctive dread. The implications stirred unease. The watchers are many, potential foes cloaked as friends, he replied, his tone sliding back into that conspiratorial cadence. Some will want to squash your ambition in its infancy. Others will be waiting to exploit any weakness you reveal. Be adept in discerning who offers genuine support and who seeks to manipulate. His warning sent shivers racing down her spine. The precariousness of her position deepened, abrupt realizations began to crystallize. She was not merely a participant but a prime target. Allies would be paramount, but how could she trust anyone? The agony of trepidation lingered, but Claire recognized a flicker of resilience in her spirit. This was her chance to evolve, to metamorphose into a force unbound by fear. I'll find those I need, and I'll build a network rooted in trust not fear, she declared, emboldened as her words echoed the burgeoning belief in her vision. Trust fosters loyalty, and loyalty is a powerful weapon. His smirk returned, but this time there was less derision and more acknowledgement. Then let us see how well you can cultivate this network. But I warn you, affiliates will come with complications you may not foresee. With her resolve sharpened like a scalpel, Claire's mind raced ahead to potential candidates. Surgeons, nurses, and even patients who once shared her convictions. Individuals with voices that needed amplification. Yet, the throbbing realization remained, they could very well become pawns in an intricate game of power she was only beginning to understand. As she began sketching a mental map of potential allies, the external world felt more tangible, more pressing. The unyielding sense of being watched escalated the pulse of her ambition. Claire recognized she was stepping closer to a confrontation not only with those who would oppose her aspirations but with the visceral choices that the nebulous nature of her new reality would demand. But what he didn't know about himself, an echo surged within. It was time to confront her own limits and perhaps, discover what she was truly made of. She glanced at him, impetus and challenge flashing in her eyes. I'm ready to engage this world fully. I will not falter in the face of adversity. The figure nodded, an acknowledgement heavy with implications. Then the time has come for you to face your first challenge. A foe will emerge, and you must be prepared to counter their moves. This game is about to get complicated. Claire's heart raced as she stood on the precipice of revelation. This wasn't merely a test of her abilities, it was a crucible that could redefine everything she believed. Who would emerge as an adversary first, and how would she master the storms ahead? The deeper she ventured, the clearer the stakes became, and a fiercely protective instinct surged within, she would not be defeated. And with that moment of resolution, the doorway to a labyrinth of trials opened wide. She was ready to take the first step. The mornings began to blend into a steady rhythm, each day stretching before Claire like a vast and treacherous ocean. The weight of her intentions grew heavier, and yet, paradoxically, it infused her with clarity. She woke earlier than usual, sharpening her mind with fleeting meditation before engaging with her medical practice. Each patient who entered her examination room became a piece on her chessboard, a potential ally in a game she was learning to navigate. Every interaction was threaded with significance. A recently discharged patient, a fiery veteran nurse named Marissa, had shared unfurling stories of disillusionment that struck a chord within Claire. Their conversations began to take on a different hue. What's the point of being a healer if the system is rotten at its core? Marissa questioned one afternoon, her eyes flashing with a mixture of frustration and vulnerability. The question haunted Claire, echoing back into her own mind. She didn't have the ready answers yet, but the urgency to provoke real change became undeniable. Maybe we can find a way to create something meaningful from within, Claire replied cautiously, offering the fragile idea like a tentative seed into fertile ground. Together, we might weave a fabric of healing that's resilient to the corruption around us. Marissa regarded her with newfound interest. You think we could turn this ship around? We must believe in a future that separates us from the ills we witness daily, Claire said, the words growing bolder with each utterance. She sensed an opening, a beginning. That very afternoon, she reached out to colleagues, planting seeds of camaraderie. Some she respected, others she believed could be swayed with the right motivation. Hope for change already sparkled in their eyes, kindled by her vision. The web of trust began to take form, but this was merely the prelude, a fragile gossamer tethering her dreams to reality. Then, a disquieting realization washed over her. Building trust wasn't just about conviction, it was also about vulnerability. Each connection would risk exposure, betrayal lurked like a fog, ominous and inconspicuous. The thrill of the challenge glimmered, yet uncertainty gnawed at her resolve. At night, the tension spilled into restless dreams, visions of the past entwined with blaring uncertainty of the future. Each room she had healed in before flashed before her, faces of the sick and wounded often mingled with shadows of those who profited from their pain, the system she felt pitted against. A terrifying truth was seeping in, the very act of healing had to be radicalized to be of value in a world bent on exploitation, but how much of herself was she willing to compromise? The next day, Ben, her most dependable surgical colleague, approached her during a brief lull. I've been hearing whispers, he began, his voice low, people are starting to notice your growing influence. They're wary of change. That's good. We need to challenge the status quo, Claire countered, an edge creeping into her tone. Yet confidence faltered with his continued gaze. But are you truly on my side? Do you doubt me? His brow furrowed, the tension tightening their bond taut. No, but I'm learning that trust is complicated, she admitted, feeling the weight of her own words. It struck her then the foundation of her emerging network depended heavily on her ability to discern intentions cloaked beneath the surface. And Ben was right, the battlefield was drawing up around her, and deception awaited at every turn. She sensed enemy moves coiling closer. Somewhere in this noisy backdrop, a challenger emerged, one who would not cower in the face of her ambition. Claire, the tension is rising. I think you need to prepare for retaliation. There are forces that don't want you to succeed, Ben warned, his sincerity cutting through her encroaching fog of doubt. Let them come, Claire declared, energy surging through her veins. I'm ready. Let us turn this fight into our advantage. There was a ferocity igniting a new fire within her, a sense of purpose melded with the recognition that combating adversity often reveals the deepest truths of one's self. The stronger she emerged in this crucible, the more capable she would become at transforming the world she inhabited. Facing a brewing storm, she turned her attention inward. What other hidden strengths lay dormant within her? It was time for the next step in her evolution. As she gathered her thoughts and energy, the sensation of being watched seeped back in. Shadows stretched further, and she sensed them closing in. A confrontation was looming, and Claire steeled herself. What if the enemy is closer than you realize? Echoed in the recesses of her mind. What lay ahead was uncertain, layered with challenges that would demand everything she had. The next move she made might ignite either her victory or her downfall, and one question lingered tightly in the air: who would stand in her way, and how fiercely would she have to fight to prove herself? Claire stepped into the clinic, the familiar scent of antiseptic and the muted sounds of bustling activity enveloping her as she moved toward her station. Yet, today was different. There was a current and undercurrent that seemed to ripple through the very fabric of the building, an urgency that thrummed beneath the surface. Today, her resolve would be tested. As she organized her files, lingering doubts crept into her mind. The feeling of being watched hadn't dissipated, it had intensified. Could it be a manifestation of her own heightened awareness, or was there truly someone monitoring her moves? Each glance exchanged between her colleagues felt like a potential judgment, a thinly veiled threat. Marissa had lit the fuse of her ambition, and today, Claire intended to act on it. The morning's rounds were not merely routine but a strategic foray into forging alliances. She approached each patient and colleague with a newfound depth, zeroing in on their frustrations and desires, not allowing any signal to go unnoticed. "Hey, Claire," said Jeffrey, a newly introduced intern she had often underestimated. "Can I get your opinion on the treatment plan for Mrs. Sims?" This request, once brushed aside, now felt like an opportunity. "Sure," Claire replied with intention, stepping closer. "But what do you think her main health concern is?" In that instant, she recognized a talent she hadn't fully tapped into, the ability to draw out potential, to mentor and cultivate leadership from those around her. Jeffrey hesitated, collecting his thoughts. "She's been anxious about her meds," he responded. "I felt like she wasn't getting through to the staff." Being heard is vital, Claire emphasized, their eyes locking as clarity ignited within her. "What if we presented a new approach in our next meeting? Let us outline patient concerns and emphasize active listening as part of care." His shoulders seemed to lift a bit, and she felt the energy shift between them. This wasn't just mentoring, it was collaboration. When she guided him, she not only fueled his growth but illuminated paths hidden for her, revealing her own evolving strengths. As the day continued, she found herself drawn to the break room, the chatter spilling over into whispers as she entered. The lenticular atmosphere thickened, faces turned, and conversations stilled abruptly. What did they know? Marissa was the first to break the silence. "Claire, you're making waves. They're starting to talk about your push for change." The static in the air made her pulse quicken. "I'm not afraid to challenge the system if I see room for improvement." "But you need to be careful," Ben interjected, his expression grave. "Those at the top don't take kindly to insubordination." "I've heard the whispers too." Her mind raced. The enemy was closer indeed, but it was also clearer. How had she underestimated the scope of resistance? "That's all the more reason to press forward," Claire asserted, her voice firm. "But it's not enough to just aim at the system. I need to prepare for the fallout. Who will stand with me?" In that moment, a sense of urgency propelled her. If she wanted to galvanize her colleagues, she had to confront the strongest forces that opposed her, the administration, led by Chief Reynolds, a man whose conservative grip over hospital policies threatened any sweeping change. "Let us form a committee," Claire proposed excitedly. "We can gather significant feedback and develop a proposal. I'll address the administration myself." "What if they deny us?" Marissa challenged, her skepticism raw yet not deterring. "Then we'll show them how their denial affects patient care. We can't let fear dictate our mission." With each word, Claire felt her fear transform into a weapon. She sensed a visceral shift among her team. Some heads bobbed in agreement, and others wore doubt like a shroud. Yet she was no longer just a healer, she was a strategist, and this fight was personal. As dusk fell, she gathered her notes and stepped into the now quiet hallways. A weight had shifted, setting her resolve further into motion. But as she limped to her car, fatigue mingled with electric determination. How would Reynolds respond? What if he decided to squash her initiative before it even took root? The opposition loomed large. A confrontation was not just necessary, it was impending. Claire gritted her teeth, steeling herself for the challenge ahead. "One way or another, I will make them listen," she muttered under her breath, feeling the burning resolve pulse through her veins. As she drove home, she envisioned her next moves, a game of chess, her strategies unfurling in tandem with an ominous tension looming larger than ever. The fight was growing, viciously creative, and deeply revealing. But beneath the insistent rhythm of the steering wheel, a question haunted her thoughts: what sacrifices would she make to secure her place in this battle? Only time would tell how far she was willing to go. As dawn broke, Claire Matthews stood before the mirror, her reflection revealing not just a woman caught in a web of complex choices but a strategist ready to reclaim her narrative. Driven by a newfound purpose, her heart pulsed with the relentless energy of ambition. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, yet she had identified her goal. Today would not merely be about healing patients, it would be about dismantling the oppressive structures of power that stifled innovation in her medical community. Walking into the clinic, Claire felt the weight of her mission pressing down, yet it was easier to carry than before. Empowered by the support of her colleagues, she envisioned the committee she would spearhead, uniting like-minded professionals in a cause greater than herself. Marissa, Ben, and Jeffrey were eager partners, rallying together to amplify patient voices, a collective effort that could spark the change so desperately needed. In her morning rounds, she took time to engage deeply with patients. "What can we do to better support you?" she asked, letting their answers shape the committee's objectives. Each insight honed her mission, reinforcing her conviction that healing could transcend the sterile walls of the clinic. It was about creating lasting impacts, not just patching wounds. The administration's anticipated response loomed large in Claire's mind, yet doubt had no place in her resolve. She recalled Dr. Wilson's encouragement to trust her instincts, and with each interaction, she felt confidence swell within her. Conviction solidified into actionable plans, and a sense of collective strength bonded the burgeoning group. Having appointments with Chief Reynolds steadily approached, and Claire felt steady, a clarity anchored her spirit. The day of her meeting with Reynolds arrived, tension crackled in the air as she entered the ornate, intimidating office. Dressed sharply, she presented herself with the confidence she had meticulously cultivated. Each prepared note felt like armor against the resistance she knew would rise. "Claire," Reynolds said, his steely gaze assessing her with the wariness of a ruler observing a potential insurrection. "I've heard murmurs about your little initiative. Let's get straight to the point." "No, let's start with the patients," Claire countered, unwavering. "The current protocols are stifling care. We need to advocate for change together." Her straightforwardness took him aback, yet a flicker of respect danced in his expression. "Change is often disruptive. Are you prepared for the backlash?" Claire lowered her voice, laser-focused. "Yes, because I believe in creating a healthcare environment that prioritizes patients over obsolete protocols. Change is required. The administration has ignored the needs of those who rely on us." Reynolds paused, clearly weighing the implications. "You realize the hospital operates under strict frameworks. We cannot uproot our methods based on mere testimonies. By continuing to follow outdated policies, we are complicit in neglect," she pressed, an earnest urgency underscoring her words. "We owe it to our patients to evolve the standards of care. This committee will put forward solutions based on collaborative anecdotes, not just statistics." As she articulated her vision, Claire detected a shift in his stance, a cautiously opened door. "You've got spirit, Matthews. But spirit won't be enough in the long run." "Then let me prove that it is," she offered, buoyed by conviction. "Your leadership can steer this toward a vision that benefits everyone: administration, staff, and most importantly, the patients." The tension in the room began to dissolve, the possibilities unfolding in favor of innovation. Reynolds appeared intrigued but met her gaze with the weight of bureaucracy still strongly anchored in his ethos. "Present your findings after the weekend. But to proceed, you will need allies. And not just the ones you envision. Would you support me in forming this committee?" she asked, the challenge hanging heavy between them. He considered her proposal, perhaps for the first time recognizing that fiery commitment could be a powerful catalyst for progress. Eventually, he nodded. "I will allow you to commence, but understand this: change comes with responsibility. You will need to prepare for those who resist." Stepping out of his office, Claire felt the rush of triumph. This was a critical juncture. The vision that once felt distant crystallized into tangible prospect as the foundation for the committee solidified with Reynolds' nod of approval. The tides of politics turning had mirrored her own evolution, as if the weight of her journey had forged a stronger version of herself willing to risk everything for what she believed in. As the sun dipped below the horizon, she gathered her team, her allies, a spirited conclave of unwavering dreamers. "We did it. Together, we can reshape healthcare for our patients. They're waiting, and we will answer," Claire declared, conviction radiating around the room. For the first time, Claire did not feel alone. Instead, a profound sense of belonging enveloped her. It wasn't just a victory, it was the start of seismic change in her world. Claire Matthews emerged not only as a healer in a sterile clinic but as a catalyst capable of igniting transformation. In this moment, everything she had fought for surged within, as if the shadows had finally receded, unveiling a brighter horizon ahead. The battle was no longer solitary. Where once she feared darkness, she now saw opportunity. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will captivate your heart. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this riveting ending. I'm eager to hear your thoughts. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand how important it is to spread tales of triumph.